Hello and welcome to What is Sustainable Fashion, our last of 5 live explainers celebrating Yale Earth Week 2021. Based on our Yale Experts Explain written article series, the purpose of these explainers is really to break down complex hot topics in sustainability using Yale's world-class expertise and trying to invite everyone in the Yale community into conversations around climate change and how it affects them. Today, we'll have Yale College student Jordan Pilant interviewing Yale School of Management alum Laura Melendrez. We'll get started in just a moment. At the end of the conversation, if we do have some time, we'll open it up to Q&A. So if you're listening and getting inspired, I encourage everyone to add your questions to the Q&A section of your screen as we go. And if you have any tech questions, you can feel free to add them in the chat and my colleagues will help you out right away. Without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Jordan to kick off our event.
Hi, all right, so I am going to start off with a bit of an inclusion statement. So the Yale Office of Sustainability recognizes that generations of Indigenous peoples and nations have stewarded the lands and waterways of what is now the state of Connecticut. And we honor and respect the enduring relationship that exists between these peoples and nations and the land on which Yale's campus resides. We recognize that Indigenous values actively connect to our work, and we seek to learn more about those connections. We understand the process will be ongoing, and we look forward to opportunities for collaboration. We ask that all participants consider their role in putting us on a pathway to right the wrongs of forced occupancy of land and the subjugation of others. Please find our full land acknowledgement in the chat and learn more about the numerous Indigenous communities that have stewarded Connecticut's land. In the spirit of inclusion, we would also like to remind the audience that live explainers are a neutral and safe space for asking questions and testing ideas. Be open, listen honestly, and act mindfully. And with that, my name is Jordan Pilant, as Ashley said, and I'm a senior here at Yale College studying political science. I'm the communications assistant at the Yale Office of Sustainability. And I'm joined by Laura Melendrez, who holds a bachelor's degree in marketing from the Monterey Institute of Technology with a master in advanced management from the Yale School of Management. Laura has lived in Mexico, Italy, Canada, and the US. Her areas of expertise are social entrepreneurship, fashion, marketing, and retail. Laura is a self-driven person who enjoys taking on new challenges. More recently, Laura and her co-founder started the company while still graduate students at Yale. And since then, the brand and its operations have evolved while preserving a commitment to paying a living wage to Mexican artisans and keeping sustainability in mind. So with those introductions, I'll start with our first question, which is, tell us about why you became passionate about ethical fashion and decided to make your own company, Amor and Rosas. I think you're muted.
Hello, Jordan, how are you? Thank you for this space and invitation. I'm very excited to share my experience and the journey that we have been following with Amor and Rosas. And I guess like starting Amor and Rosas was just like something that happened like in a very magical way. So we were just like, Deborah and I co-founded Amor and Rosas in 2016 when we were still at SOM. And we won the fellowship at YEI. And so we had to stay there during the summer. And it was so beautiful because I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know what to do. So I was thinking about, okay, it has to be something that gives me a purpose and I want to help people. And then when we were thinking about like, who should we help? It's like, okay, well, women, because we are so underrepresented in the everywhere. I mean, but then we were, okay, we need to do something that's good. So we were thinking about making fashion, and Deborah and I like bonded thread. We were super excited when we were in New Haven, like to go to the sample sales in New York. And we were like, okay, maybe fashion it is. And I was just like researching about which groups we could just like work with. And then everything just started to fall like in a natural way. So we were like, okay, in Mexico, there are these beautiful hand embroideries that women make, and they are taught to make generation after generation. So they also carry the culture of the country. But there were a few issues there with the style, right? It's like, okay, I go to a market and I love what I see, but then when I put it on, it's not very flattering on my body. So we were like, okay, there may be something there. Maybe what we should do is to bring modern designs for the socially conscious consumer like us, and then work with the artisans to pay to them the right price and just like offer them an employment opportunity, which is something that I think we all deserve.
That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about what slow fashion and fast fashion each are?
Yeah, so I guess like with all of this in the fashion industry, right? Like what people are trying to do, it's always like to push the new product. So that's when we have these fashion trends. And if you are constantly following the fashion trend, you'll find yourself that you need to renew your closet all the time. So to me, as low fashion, it's more about finding a style. And especially if you are a conscious consumer and you want an understanding that fashion is a way to expressing who you are. And then how I want people to perceive me, then you are like, okay, I have a belief system and my belief system doesn't change very often. So then why my style should be changing in the same way as the trends, right? So to me, as low fashion, it's about defining who you are, your identity, your belief system, and then choosing pieces of garment of fashion that aligns with who you are. And then you care more about the way the whole pieces are made and the story behind it. And then you feel so proud because you are also using the opportunity of expressing yourself with the clothing to support people or brands like ours at Amor and Rosas. And then in contrast with this, you have the whole fast fashion movement. The fast fashion movement, it's wrong because they're so worried about creating cheap garments. Then they use cheap materials that are very polluting, and they also don't pay the right price to the people that work in the industry. And that's where sustainable fashion it's like that's why sustainable fashion is so important, because like we are trying to modify the whole system where we want to buy less of the pieces that we love and are going to and we are going to love and take care of. And once we don't want it, we'll probably resell them because they have such a higher value, like emotional value to us.
That's awesome. And with that, what is the fashion revolution and how does Amor and Rosas fit and your work fit into that?
Yeah, well, the fashion revolution is something that really gets us very excited because it was one of the first, it was one of the inspirations for us to start Amor and Rosas. And this week, they're also celebrating the Fashion Revolution Week. So if you don't know what it is, you should like look it up. It's very interesting. And so what it is like after what happened in Bangladesh in 2000, I think 14, and what happened there is like over 1,000 garment workers died there because the factory was damaged, and like it just like the whole building fell apart. And then what happened is that they were making fast fashion or just like these super popular brands there. And when they questioned the owner of the factory, he was like, well, the factory was in those circumstances because I'm not paid enough. So the whole system there is wrong. And it's so sad to understand that how like something that's so like beautiful and fashion, and when you see like the photos and all these like whatever you feel about the fashion marketing, it looks so luxurious and interesting. But then when you look at the way things are made, it's so sad to find out that people working in the industry, they are just like being abused.
Yeah. Um, and how do you find sustainable, ethical, and durable materials to use in your fashion for Amor and Rosas?
Yeah, well, when we started, it was very hard to find eco-friendly materials. This was in 2016, and I'm very happy to learn that now there are more options And I think we can split them in two. Like once it's just like these nice materials that are biodegradable, like the hemp. We use hemp all the time. I love it. It's the best thing ever, in my opinion. And then we use hemp in raw color, and because the embroideries are so colorful, it just like it just works perfectly. So we have this neutral, beautiful raw color, and then we add the colorful threads to it. And the other material that we use is bamboo. Um, and it's super nice. Like this one is bamboo, and like the touch of it, it's so soft. I think that's the best part. But then you also have these other fabrics that are made with recovered materials. Like there's this brand that's called Econeo, and what they do is that they recover fishing nets from the ocean and transform them into this fabric that you can make swimsuits with. Um, and so what we do is that we're just like researching, looking for what's new, and then understanding if it's a good fit for us. We also have used this other fabric that I love. It's called upcycle denim, and I also feel very proud because they are making it in Guatemala, which is very near to Mexico. So it's like it's also locally sourced. And what they do is that when you are cutting the fabric to make clothing, 30% of the material goes to waste. So they recover that material that's still virgin and reprocess it to make this upcycled fabric that they call and the brand it's called New Denim Project. It's amazing. So we use that one. I also like that one, the new denim project, because they avoid the use of polluting dyes. Like dyeing the fabric, it's one of the most polluting steps in the process of fashion. So avoiding that part, it's a huge step towards having a more sustainable brand. And well, I have another one. Like there's this other one that's called Piñatex. Um, and it's made in the Philippines, but they finish it in Spain. That doesn't make sense to me, but well, what's beautiful about it is that they make this beautiful eco-friendly fabric made from pineapples. Yeah. And it's super nice because it's what I learned is that in it's common in the Philippines to make fabric with pineapples. So now they just like move that a step forward, and they're making this eco-friendly leather that we use at the fashion week in Mexico, and we made this like beautiful jacket that's that's vintage inspired, and then it has nice a super nice volume on the shoulders.
That's so cool. What advice do you have for people who are just beginning their ethical fashion journey?
Well, I'll say that the most sustainable action you can do is to stop consuming. So love everything you already have in your closet. And just think about it. It's like, okay, I already have all of these things. Am I going to be able to continue wearing them? If the answer is no, okay, just like find a new person that is going to like them, right? Or resell them. I know it takes time, but it's just like better. Because the worst part about over consuming clothing is that everything ends up in these dumpsters that are going to like contain our bad decisions forever. So I think that's one part. Like love what you already have, understand if it works for you, for your style. If it doesn't work, okay, find a new owner that is going to love this old clothing to you, but it may be a treasure for someone else. And then if you are going to buy something new, just like take the time to understand how are things made. I think the worst part and how all of the industry like got out of control is when we separated um, the buying or like the commercial place and the manufacturing. So we need to reconnect with how things are made, understanding the processes. Even us, like for us to make a new piece, it takes us 90 days. And sometimes our customers are like, okay, it takes forever. But it's just old fashioned. Everything is handmade, just like the hand embroidery. And then just like finding the materials, getting in the right place, cutting it, putting everything together. So when people go to the studio or when I tell them the whole process, they get so like interested and surprised. It's like, okay, it takes a lot of time, it's a lot of work, and it is. So just like appreciating those like all the work that people put into the fashion or into making clothing, because it's manual and it's very labor intense. It's going to also help us to be more conscious about the buying. um, so I would say that buying less, understanding what you're getting, and loving what you already have.
Thanks so much, Laura and Jordan, for this conversation. I'd love to give Laura a chance to respond to some of the questions that are starting to come in from the audience. If you haven't done so already, please pop your questions into the Q&A portion of the chat and we'll get to them if you can. Jordan, let's open the floor up for some of those audience questions.
Awesome. So the first one that I see is, how is bamboo thread / fabric made? Is the process environmentally sustainable?
Yeah, well, that's tricky because like the thing is that bamboo grows everywhere, right? So that's why it's sustainable. But then it's a semi chemic process. So that's the downside of bamboo fabric. And if in my opinion, the most sustainable option is hemp, but then also hemp textile, it's very stiff. So it doesn't give you the option of having something that adapts to your body. And the whole idea of Amor en Rosas is to make things in a way that they are modern and still like sexy and trendy.
Another question is, where can everybody shop your clothing brand?
Oh,
And how does it work?
yeah, like you can go to our website. I'm going to type it in. And we do shipping in Mexico and in the US all the time. We can also ship to any other country, but Mexico and the US is very simple. So just visit our website. It's Amor en Rosas. And yeah, next question.
How can one ID if brands and their clothing are sustainable? What clues should people pay attention to when researching a company or when looking at the clothes and what they're made of?
Yeah, well, I think a few of the practices that you can have is like the materials you use. If you have an impact on the people, or if you have like a purpose, or the other way, it's like the internal processes. A few of the things that we also like do is that we produce in small batches. So we use a scarcity because it works fine it works fine for us because it's a luxury after all. So our customers know that we only made 20 pieces for each batch. And then every time we recreate or relaunch an old style, it's always going to be different. Like even if I make this one again, I'll probably change the colors. So that makes all the pieces unique. And it also works very well for us because we don't carry all inventory and we don't have an inventory problem, which is one of the biggest problems in the fashion industry, because they produce everything overseas, and then they have these like big minimum orders. Most brands who doesn't control the supply chain, they end up with 500 pieces of a piece that they won't sell. So that's why we are always producing small batches, and we prefer to sold out on a style than overproducing something that we won't be able to sell.
And then another question that we got in the chat was, how did you find the artisans you work with?
Well, that's the most fun part. Right now we work with two communities, but when we started, I was working with 8 groups. I don't know how I did it, but I needed to find the right one, right? So what I did is that I went to different communities in Mexico City that they knew they carry like the tradition of hand embroidery. Because like once you understand that within Mexico there are different ethnic groups, and each of them they do a different technique. So they just like they do embroideries, but then the technique is different. So I would just like work with them and give them an order, because like we have this process where the artisans live in places that are very isolated. but they need to be able to like have a bank account. They need to be able to go to the closest city and use the courier so they can ship back and forth the packages. And they also need to be able to use WhatsApp because we're always sending pictures. And like there are a few ways of doing things, right? Like I could just like go there and spend the whole month with them, and then we develop the samples. But at the beginning, it wasn't like we didn't have the money to do it, so it was okay. Well, we are going to work around this. And I like how it turned out because that way they also participate. So I send instructions, but they need to fill in the blanks, and then they send me pictures, and we just like participate in the design process. So they also have an input instead of me just like being there and trying to impose every design like decision. And so I go to the communities. I look for NGOs there or maybe government offices, and then I pitch the idea and I talk to them. And if I feel like I like them, then we start working. And right now we are working with two groups only: one in Chiapas, in Chenalo, and there's this group leader, Angelica Maria, and she leads a group of 45 women. I don't know how she does it, but she's so beautiful. We have like doing this with in October when we were there, we made this survey, and I was very anxious and nervous about the results. But all the ladies love her, and I was like, okay, this is amazing. But it's just like it's so beautiful when you run into people who do things because they have a good heart and they do believe that they can do things in a different way, and it's so inspiring. And then the other group I work with, it's in Hidalgo. They belong to this group that's called Otomi. Even Hermes use their print. And this group is different because there are 10 people and they're all family and they work together. So Maria del Carmen, she's the group leader and she's the one that I'm working with, and she just like passes along the work to the rest of the family. And the reason we stopped bringing more artisans to our artisan network is because right now we need to increase the income per person, and 55 people in the network, it's a lot. So we need to grow this year. That's one of our objectives for 2021. It's to increase our volume so we can just like have a greater impact to the artisans.
That's so cool. I love to hear about that. So how do you think fashion can be marketed better so that for younger buyers, sustainability becomes the number one criteria for buying fashion?
Um, well, that's a good one. Well, I think the whole market, we need to learn and understand to be better educated. Because if the whole market starts to demand to only buy sustainable products, then all the brands are going to be obligated to shift. So we do have a lot of power there. And maybe just like as a brand we can market it, but I guess like right now with the pandemic we are changing so much. Like I think, or at least to me, the pandemic was just like a wake up call. It's like we need to change now. And I can see that because we had increased ourselves. Like people are asking more. They finally understand what we are doing because in 2016, and I remember like pitching the idea to new customers because I would just like go to pop-ups all the time. They would be like, I would be like, okay, we are making like we are an ethical fashion brand, and they will be like, and they will be an ethnic fashion brand, and I was like, no, ethical, and I would have to explain everything to them. And I have seen like an increase of the use of the term. I hope it's real.
Another question that we got in the Q&A section is how involved and informed are you about the whole production process with your materials? So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's complicated. So because like we don't make the fabric, right? So the only thing we can do is that we ask them before we bring in a new supplier into the company is like, okay, can you send me reports, pictures, and you validate what they are saying? But that's as far as we can go, because like just producing everything and we are only 6 people, it takes a lot of time. But I guess there are many opportunities there. Just like seeing how the product offering in terms of eco-friendly textiles is increasing, it's encouraging, but still there are many things that we need to do there, or that we can. There are opportunities that we can just like attack there.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any certifications that you believe are particularly meaningful when looking at clothing brands?
Yeah, well, we are a B Corp, by the way. And we got that one last year. It was very exciting to us because like we were saying, we are an ethical fashion brand, but we didn't have a way to prove it. And I guess the best one for a fashion brand, it's being a B Corp, because that way you prove that your practices are above the standard.
Are there any challenges you face with scaling up a sustainable fashion company?
Yeah, yeah. I think not right now, like not for us right now. We're still a very small company, but I guess, and I have thought about this before. It's like I guess there's a conflict between being a big brand and being sustainable. Like but like scaling up for us, the challenges that we have is like how are we going to control our artisans network, right? How are we going to make sure that they are receiving the right income, that the group leaders are doing a good job, and then maintaining the quality, because everything is just like, it's so easy to have differences when you are producing hand embroideries, because they all meet at the group's leader's house, and she just like splits the work. Then they go home, and because most of them are moms, and they also work, they have all their responsibilities, they'll just like work in the morning, maybe from 10 to 1 p.m. when they have like a moment to work, or maybe in the afternoon. So then after 2 weeks they meet again, and then everybody just shows up their work, and then sometimes one of them just understood something completely different. And but we always just like find a way to manage things. And we also love to have unique pieces, so that's also just about embracing how those defects or errors has something that makes your company unique. It's just a way of saying, okay, maybe this one is different, but I know I have this customer that is going to be very excited with this piece, so just send it over and I'll find a way to sell it. But that's also a problem, right? Because then you don't have something that's the product, it's always going to have variations, and that's a problem if you want to scale up.
What do you believe the main barriers are between a consumer and sustainable choices? For example, if someone only has big chain stores or thrifting options where they live, how can they choose clothing more sustainably?
Well, buying vintage is a very sustainable option. Yeah, and yeah, I think like like people, we need to get creative, right? Or even just saying what I was saying is like things that I have in my closet, just like thinking about new ways that I can mix and match them so I can create new outfits. So I think that's the best part. Instead, next time you're feeling like you want to buy something, go to your closet and think about like how can I mix what I have in a new way and create a new outfit. I think just like being creative in that way, and just like being a very like decided about, I am not going to buy anything else.
Um, oh,
Thanks so much. We are a couple minutes over time. So on behalf of Yale Sustainability, I extend my thanks to Laura for sharing your expertise today. Thanks to the audience for your really engaging questions, and to Jordan for being such a solid interviewer. and really for inviting the community into this conversation. Unfortunately, this is our last live explainer of the week, but if you loved this conversation, you can certainly find the recordings of it on our YouTube channel. And we still have a handful of events, content, and activities left on our Yale Earth Week 2021 site. So I encourage you to check it out at earthweek.yale.edu. Thanks so much for joining us and for making Yale Earth Week 2021 a success. See you all soon.